All right, it's a Tuesday. Welcome to the Cohn Zone meets the Krug Show. The Niners lost. They play Sunday against Miami. Grant and I are going to tackle all the biggest topics in Ninerland right here, right now. Come aboard. And welcome to the Krug Show meets the Cohn Zone. 2 o'clock, or I should say 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, 6 o'clock Eastern. Brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. And we're also both brought to you by BetUS. With BetUS, you get the fastest payouts in the industry, easy withdrawals. We'll wager on a couple games before we get out of here. Head over to betus.com. Use the promo code YouTube150 and you'll get 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and 125% sign-up bonus on your next two, up to $2,000. Again, sign up at betus.com. Use that code YouTube150 to claim your offer. All right, we're off and running on a Tuesday. Grant, good to see you. Niners making some news today. Usually a Tuesday late in the year would be quiet, but that is not the case. Today, the 49ers signed Austin Pleasance, an offensive tackle, a 5-year veteran, to their practice squad. He's been all over the league. Chargers, Bears twice, Cardinals twice, Chargers twice. The Bears released him December the 3rd, so he can play guard, he can play center. He is on the practice squad. The Niners also signed Chandler Wooten, a linebacker, to the practice squad. He played at Auburn. And Mason Pline goes from the practice squad to the practice squad injured reserve list. He must have been hurt in practice. And the Niners have waived cornerback Ambry Thomas from the IR. So he is now free to go out there and find a new home. And Grant, to me, this is kind of the biggest problem in Ninerland that kind of, it's not going to get a lot of headlines, right? And waiving Ambry Thomas is not the kind of thing that's, going to make anybody really, look up and go, whoa, hey, we need to talk about that. But we need to talk about that because as far as I'm concerned, this is the 49ers' number one issue. It's not Shanahan. It's not the special teams. It's not Brock Purdy. It's the fact that this regime in the front office, and maybe it is partially Shanahan, and let's say it's half Shanahan, half Lynch. But this regime in the front office, Grant, in first, second, and third round picks has been atrocious. They have missed on 19. They've hit on 8. And that's if you give them Jake Moody and Jair Brown as hits. Most Niner fans would say those are misses. So it could be 21 misses and 6 hits. I have it down as 19 misses and 8 hits. But you can't.
Last 3 years?
Well, no, in the regime. Since they've been here. Okay, here's who this is.
In the top 3 rounds. In the top 3 rounds. Got it.
Top 3 rounds. These are the wasted picks in the top 3 rounds. Jalen Hurd, round 3. Mike McGlinchey, Dante Pettis.
Yeah.
You just named one. Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Ahkello Witherspoon, C.J. Beathard, Tarvarius Moore, Javon Kinlaw, Trey Lance, and he counts for 3. Trey Sermon. Yeah, Trey Sermon, actually 4.
Davis Price.
Davis Price, Ambry Thomas, Drake Jackson, Danny Gray, Cam Latu, and until proven otherwise, Ricky Pearsall. And I'll give their hits as Bosa, Debo, Fred, Ayuk, Pooney, and Renardo from this last draft. And I'll give them Moody and Jair just because Moody's starting as your kicker. And Jair, it's kind of debatable. Is he good? Is he bad? Talk to somebody different. They'll have a different take. But I just want to not have any arguments coming back on these numbers. So I'm going to be conservative and give Lynch and Shanahan, Moody, and Jair Brown as hits. That is still 20 misses in this regime in the first 3 rounds. And Ambry Thomas was just waived today, very quietly saying goodbye to another guy they invested a day 2 pick in. This is where the 49ers, I love John Lynch, and I think John Lynch is a great face of the franchise. They needed a face of the franchise, but you can't miss 20 times in the first 3 rounds in your regime and not feel the brunt of that. And that's, to me, the number one issue with the 49ers. That you can't go 0 for 20 or you can't hit on 30% of your first, second, and third round picks and miss on 70%. You just can't.
Yeah, and in addition, in free agency, they're going out and signing guys like Devondre Campbell and Javon Hargrave. So I
Isaiah
think
Oliver.
Right. So like the Niners everyone knows they have a pivotal offseason coming up. They're going to have to, if they're smart, cut a bunch of high-priced veterans and replace them with guys in the draft. And I mean, the first guy they're probably going to cut is Javon Hargrave. So they have a first-round pick, and it'll probably be most likely on a defensive tackle. Last time they took a defensive tackle in the top 20, they ended up with Kinlaw. So they've wasted so many first-round picks. At this point, it's almost like, man, trade the pick and get a proven commodity because you can't scout. And until Pearsall does something, that makes me feel like maybe that's the right way to go for the 49ers because they struggle in round one, especially.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's funny. The Rams struggled in round one for a while, and then Les Snead just said, "Screw this. We're trading our picks for established guys." And they traded for Ramsey, and they traded for Von Miller, and they traded for Stafford, and they tried to trade for McCaffrey. And the Rams got very, hey, we'll trade our picks. We, F those damn picks. We don't need them. We'll trade them for veterans. You could make an argument that the 49ers might want to try doing the same because or switch up their process or their decision maker or whatever, but you can't miss 20 times in your regime since the 2017 draft and not feel the brunt of that. I mean, that is a ton of picks.
Who are the two defensive tackles the Niners have drafted in the top 20 in this regime? Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas. You really feel confident about them? His third time a charm with this guy? Because they're going to take a D tackle in round one. We all know it. So are they going to get it right?
I mean, I like Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, but I mean, who knows? Who knows if they're going to get it right? But I mean, this is the issue. This is the problem, don't you think? I mean, we can talk about other things. Injuries have hurt, and there's been players individually that have backslid and gotten, they're not as effective. And Kyle's had some down things this year for sure. And you got to kind of wonder about his health and how he's feeling and all that. But this is the elephant this is the 800-pound gorilla in the corner of the room. I mean, you have a face of your franchise that you really like as the face of your franchise, and John Lynch, and what he did Thursday night, makes him even that much more popular with the faithful because he went down there and got in the face of Devondre Campbell and said, "Get the fuck off my sideline if you're not going to play." And I like that about John Lynch, but I don't like the fact that you've missed 20 times out of 28 opportunities in the first 3 rounds of the draft. And if you want to say, why are the Niners in this spot now where Detroit looks more talented, Minnesota looks more talented, Green Bay looks more talented, Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston, they all look more talented than the Niners. Why is that? Because of this, because of 20 misses in the first 3 rounds during this regime. And
this is why the Niners have held on to their old core for so long, because they can't count on replacing anyone important with a high pick. Like, they hit on draft picks, but it's often in round 5 or 7 or an undrafted pick, and it's like someone that completely surprises them. But when they actually try to get someone to fill a need like Ambry Thomas in round 3, it's abysmal. It's a problem. So yeah, they got to work on that.
And it seems like every time they double up in the draft, the guy they picked second is better than the guy they picked first. It's like, oh, we got to have Trey Sermon, but then you got Elijah Mitchell. Oh, we got to have Ty Davis Price, but then you come up with J.P. Mason. Oh, we've got to have Danny Gray. Well, Danny Gray sucked, but you kind of came up with, Ronnie Bell or whatever. I mean, yeah, I got to have Kamla too. Well, he sucks, but maybe Mason Pline might not be bad. I mean, it's just they're finding guys, some decent players on the third day, but nothing replaces, first, second, and third round draft choices. And a lot of those guys are, I mean, if Kyle's an offensive guy, Hurd, McGlinchey, Pettis, Beathard, Lance, and Lance counts for 3. So,
but Larry, the question is, why are the Niners better at drafting later? That's the conundrum with this team. They're actually good.
Why are they better drafting later, and why are they for having an offensive head coach that should have a pretty good idea of what he wants in an offensive football player? Why are they missing so much on the offensive side of the ball?
I have a theory. So on the offensive picks and in the first 3 rounds, those are the picks where Kyle is more likely to be involved. Metal. And he's a smart guy. He knows football, but he's not a college football guy. He doesn't really know these players as well as scouts. And I think when it gets to day 3, maybe he's like, all right, I'm out. I didn't study these guys. You guys do your thing. And then the Niners scouting department, front office, is actually really good. They inherited it from the Balky days. Tariq Ahmad's been here since the Harbaugh days. They actually do their job and do a good job. Is it possible that Kyle is like, Mr. Do everything in this organization when he finally lets other people do their expertise that the Niners benefit?
I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Yes. All I know is you can't go 0 for 12 on offensive players in the first 3 rounds and maintain.
They got Ayuk. That's one.
He's got Ayuk. There's got Ayuk. Yeah, and they got Ayuk, and they got Debo, and they got Pooney. So they got 3 good offensive picks.
They got Beathard.
12 bad offensive picks. That's a lot. That's an awful lot. And if they hit on half of them, CJ Beathard. They traded up. I mean, a lot of these guys they traded up for. They traded up for CJ Beathard. They traded up for Dante Pettis. I mean, you're really bad. I mean, it's bad when you miss in the draft, but when you trade up like they did for Lance and Pettis and some of these guys, CJ Beathard, and you miss, you're not just missing with the pick, you're missing with the assets that you traded to get up to get that pick. So, I mean, it's just, they
in a lot of ways, this organization, this regime's best moves have been like the trades for Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, because they saw guys and actually maybe got them for less than they're worth. You don't have to give up a first round pick for either one. But in the draft, I mean, in the actual draft, they've gotten lucky, really. 5th round pick, George Kittle, 7th round pick, Brock Purdy. They're really defined by their absolute blind luck in the draft.
They've done really well on day 3, but they have not done well on day 1 or day 2, and that's where you make your football team. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm Jed, we've talked about it, is the regime coming back? It's been a very disappointing year. If I'm Jed, I want my regime back. It's not like I want to switch the regime, but you know what? I think I might want to, give Kyle a little less personnel control. Maybe switch things up as far as personnel goes. Somebody's got to answer for 20 mistakes in the first 3 rounds during this regime. It's a defining thing right now. Those names are staring you in the eye. So, I mean, to me, that's the number one thing. All right, number 2. Let's get to topic 2 here. There's a lot of debate about what the Niners ought to do at quarterback. I've been so busy doing my own streams that I haven't peeked into what you're advocating at this juncture. How do you feel about the quarterback? How do you feel about Purdy? I mean, the one thing that's really clear is that he's backslid this year. I don't care if you like him or don't like him. The stats are the stats. Last year, he had 33 touchdown passes, 11 picks. Let me double check that. 31 touchdowns, 11 picks last year. This year, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. And he threw a really crushing interception against the Rams. And when I watched the All-22, I'm just absolutely, totally baffled by this decision from a guy who's made a lot of good decisions in a short amount of time. He had nobody open deep. If you looked at the coverage, it was all of the coverage. They were giving him 3 checkdowns, and everybody was deep. He had a rusher in his face. He never really saw the receiver he was throwing it to. And he had 3 guys who were ready to be checked down to, and it was 2nd down, and there was plenty of time left. And he just put that ball up there in harm's way and made the kind of play that, loses you the game and lost the Niners the game. So I'm a big Brock Purdy fan. You know that, and everybody in here knows that. But he lost the 49ers the game, and I don't know that I would put that on Shanahan at all. I mean, he had 3 guys underneath that were all there. It was a second down pass play. There was plenty of time on the clock. There was no reason. The risk reward made no sense there. So to me, I like Brock Purdy. Why? Because I think he plays on time. I think the ball is accurate, and he's a good decision maker. But if he's going to be a bad decision maker, and to me, he looks like a guy whose arm strength is diminished. I don't know if it's the elbow injury, the shoulder, but to me, Grant, the last 3 or 4 games, all of his deep balls are just hanging in the air. They don't have anything on them. I mean, this one was picked, but there was 3 or 4 others that could have been picked over the last couple of games. So where are you with what the Niners ought to do at quarterback? And then we'll play the Baldy cut because Brian Baldinger weighed in on this today on 95.7 The Game. Where are you? What should the Niners do at quarterback? Because they have a major decision on their hands right now. It's going to impact the future of this franchise for sure. They're at a crossroads with Brock Purdy. He's played well, but now it's time to either commit or decommit. What do you want to do?
It seems to me he was, great for like 12 months in the sense that he won and he put up great numbers. From December of 2022 to December of 2023, he was great. Then that Ravens game happened. And he hasn't quite been the same quarterback since then. I mean, the last 12 months since that game, he's 9-9 with a quarterback rating of 91 and about, I think, more turnovers than touchdowns. So if he's been excellent for 12 months and not so great for 12 months, how do you really say you know who he is and give him a 5-year contract or a 4-year contract? To me, the move is to ask him to play out his rookie deal. But I think in reality, if you ask him to play out his rookie deal, then he'll request a trade and you'll have to move on and get someone else. So I just don't understand. Like, I don't see how you don't end up trading him. If you offer him like the Baker Mayfield contract, which I think is fair, even maybe generous, given what is happening this year, what he just did in the do or die game against the Rams. He was as bad as could be, as you just pointed out. You offer him 3 years, $100 million, and he says that's an insult. I want $60 million a year. Trade me. I mean, I just don't see how this doesn't end in a long, drawn out standoff, just like the thing with Ayuk, unless you give him $60 million off the bat, which I wouldn't do. So if that's all he wants, if he needs to be a top 5 paid quarterback, can't do it. I can't do it. He's not that good. I don't think any team would give him that kind of money. So I liked what Baldinger said. I think it makes a lot of sense. Darnold is clearly going to be cheaper than Brock Purdy. Purdy, like the way he's throwing this year is alarming. He used to have more zip on his throws. I mean, to me, you're wondering about his elbow more than his shoulder. Is that elbow injury taking a toll? I mean, he got the surgery. It looked good right afterward. But right now, this season, he scrambles well. He's a competitor, but just throwing the ball. Excuse me if this is blasphemous, but it looks like Nick Mullins. Does. Just throwing. Love him as a competitor and as a runner and as a scrambler, but he's scrambling too much and the ball isn't looking good. Like his deep balls are consistently underthrown. He missed the one to Pearsall too, who was open. I think it's been alarming the way he's been throwing this year. Not just in terms of arm strength, but in terms of accuracy too. I would not give him a 4-year contract. Absolutely not. I'd be more interested in signing Darnold.
It's such a tough call because Brock, I think, is better than Darnold. And there's a limited sample size for both. But these are your options. I mean, the idea of like, hey, Brock, play this year on your, let's wait for a year. Not going to happen. That's not going to happen, according to the people that I've talked to. Now, I don't have a direct pipeline to his agent, right? I don't. Kyle Strongton is his agent. But I know people that do. And he has let it be known to those people that Brock ain't taking, $40 million or $45 million AAV. A lot of people are like, hey, give him a 3-year, $120 million deal, $40 million a year, and guarantee every penny.
I don't like that either, but yeah.
He's not, but I don't think, from what I've been told through people that have talked to Brock's agent, that Brock's agent ain't going for that he's not going for the AAV of 40 or 45 million that he wants to be paid at the top of the scale. And that means Dak Prescott money at 60, 65 million.
But Larry, if the Niners say, no, thank you, we're not going to do that, what team is going to swoop in and trade the 49ers a first-round pick for the right to give Brock Purdy $60 million a year? Where is that market?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his market is.
Because it existed for Ayuk.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that there's going to be a trade market for Brock just because he's a quarterback, and there's so many teams that don't have quarterbacks. And even this year's, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward, but it's not, they're hardly proven assets. So it's a very speculative draft market. And Brock, we don't know. We don't know how people view Brock Purdy. Maybe people view him as awesome. Maybe people view him as really, really limited. The one thing that I do know, though, he's probably going to get $50 million. And I don't think, I know there's people that are like, well, he's not worth that. And he may not be worth that. But who is worth it? I mean, Jalen Hurts makes $51 million. He's got no rings, and he's sub 500 in the playoffs. Lamar is getting $52 million. He's sub 500 in the playoffs. He has no rings. Herbert makes 52.5. He's 500 career, has never won a playoff game, and obviously no rings. Jared Goff makes $53 million. He's 500 in the playoffs, no rings. Tua's makes $53 million. He's never won a playoff game, obviously no rings. Trevor Lawrence is 22-38. He makes $55 million. He's 1-1 in the playoffs, no rings. I mean, none of these guys have rings. Prescott, Burrow, Jordan Love, those guys make $55 million. Burrow makes $55 million. Prescott makes $60. Prescott's 2-5 in the playoffs. Burrow's 5-2 in the playoffs, but has no rings. And Love is 1-1 in the playoffs, has no rings. I guess my point is there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 9 guys in the NFL right now who make over $50 million a year, and they've combined for no Super Bowl rings. None. So, I mean, it seems like other people are paying their quarterbacks based on, I don't know. I mean, what's Trevor Lawrence based? He's sub 500. What's his pay based on? Just like he looks the part. He's got nice hair. So I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I guess if Kyle Strongton wants to make an argument, he can make a pretty strong argument that Brock Purdy probably deserves to be paid since he's 23-11 and 4-2 in the playoffs and has been to a Super Bowl, even though he hasn't won it. He probably is going to make a pretty compelling argument that he deserves north of $50 million. Now,
yeah, but unless you're really a top 5 quarterback, team's going to regret that contract. Like Love can play like a top 5 quarterback at times. Goff's putting up top 5 quarterback numbers right now. I'm sure the Dolphins regret paying Tua. It's never going to work for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence isn't good, but that organization is terrible. And they weren't winning with him on his rookie deal anyway. So it seems to me like when it does work, paying a quarterback that much, either he's truly elite or he's close to it, and the team is great at drafting. And you just made the case of how bad the Niners are at drafting. Like, if you're going to spend $55 million on one player, you need to just nail those first, second, and third round draft picks every year, like Detroit does, like Philly does. But the Niners don't. So what's going to happen is you'll pay Brock Purdy all that money. People praise him, say it was the right move. McCaffrey will end up falling off. So will Kittle. So will Trent. So will Debo. And then he'll be all him, and a team that sucks at drafting early, and they won't win very much. Maybe a team like this, unless again they really feel he's a top 5 quarterback, which he's not, then you keep your options open at quarterback. Don't spend a lot of money on this position because again, your whole philosophy and identity is defense and running the ball and throwing 4-yard passes, maybe 15 sometimes.
The question is, what are your options? I mean, to me, it seems tell me if you think there's other options. I think the options are you sign Purdy, and I don't think you're going to sign him for anything under 50. So I would say you sign Purdy at 50 and you build around him. That's one option. I don't know that I don't think he's going to he's going to demand a trade if you offer him 40, 45. So maybe if you want to trade him, maybe you offer him 40, 45, right? Then you could sign Sam Darnold. I believe he is a free agent. He signed a 1-year deal. But then you got to ask yourself the question, What is Sam Darnold going to do here? He's 33-37 career. He's 12-2 with Jefferson and Addison and the Vikings this year. But is that the Vikings? Like, what would he do next year here with Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing and half a season of Ayuk, or clearly past his prime Debo? I don't know that he's going to put up Sam Darnold type numbers that he put up in Minnesota this year here. So that's that. There's one question on Sam. Then, Kyle likes Kirk Cousins. He's available. You could trade for Kirk Cousins. He's 83-74-2 career, 1-3 in the playoffs. You could try to trade Brock and your pick and move up if you love Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. That would be high risk. Or you could sign a reclamation project quarterback like a Justin Fields, a Mac Jones, a Daniel Jones, a Zach Wilson.
How about that?
And really, I mean, what if the Niners signed Mac Jones and traded?
Forget Mac Jones. What about Daniel Jones?
Or
Daniel one of the Jones? Two. A quarterback named Jones. Both guys were first-round picks. I mean, Daniel Jones has been awful, but he was on awful teams. So was Mac Jones. Sign both of them. Sign both Jones. Don't offer Brock Purdy an extension and say, Brock, guess what? Instead of $255 million, you're getting nothing and a quarterback competition, and you're competing with both Joneses. What do you say? And if he holds out, he's just hurting himself. The Niners have the two Joneses. They're fine. Well, I like that strategy.
First of all, if you think that Mac Jones can process, the one thing, Mac Jones has no mobility, but he does have accuracy, and he is very smart, and he can process. Daniel Jones makes tons of mistakes. He's got great athleticism and size, but he's a turnover machine. And then there's Zach Wilson, who I think wants to be here. And
Forget Zach Wilson.
I know, but I think Shanahan likes Zach Wilson. That would be my guess. I could be wrong by that. I don't have sources, but Steve Young seemed to think that when he was coming out in the draft. Then there's one other wild card that we have.
They were interested in Daniel Jones, though. They were talking. You asked about it, right? They were talking about bringing him in. Well, the fact that the Vikings are interested makes me interested, because the Vikings are one of the top organizations in the league. And if they were the ones that could see it in Sam Darnold and make it happen, and they already brought Daniel Jones into the picture, I'm interested.
So
not because he's a franchise savior, but if you put a good team around him, maybe we've never seen Daniel Jones with a good team around him. We've never seen that.
Right. And he was well coached at Duke under Cutcliffe. So that would take balls, man. That would take balls to go sign a Daniel Jones or a Mac Jones and bring them in as a reclamation project and give them the starting quarterback job and trade Brock Purdy. One, I guess I would be interested to know what do you think Brock Purdy would fetch?
That's my question. Where is the Brock Purdy market? No offense to Brock, but which team is thinking like, you know what? If things get weird with the Niners and Brock, let's give them a call. That's an opportunity for us. Maybe we could give Brock Purdy $60 million a year. I'm not sure that team exists. And if no other team would give Brock Purdy more than 45, then why the Niners? And if he wants to sit out, again, you're just hurting yourself.
Who are they negotiating? Well, and we're going to find out what kind of negotiator Parag is, because Parag's played super hard ball with Ayuk. We'll see if, and then caved. We'll see if he plays hard ball here, or do they?
Would the Saints trade for him? They have a dome. They like Drew Brees. They have Derek Carr
and
Spencer Rattler. I don't know if they would. Would the Patriots trade for him? They have Drake May.
I don't think the Patriots would, but the New York Giants might. The New York Giants might look at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and go, you know what? They look attractive, but they're kind of risky. We don't know. They could say, hey,
but they won't trade a first-round pick for Brock.
They wouldn't trade the second pick in the draft, but what if you could get, what if you had a quarter? What if you could get Sam Darnold to sign a contract here, and you could move Brock Purdy for a 2 and a 3 or a couple 2s? You might do that.
I would.
Here's the other name that I think has to be mentioned, because he's a Hall of Famer. What about Russell Wilson?
I'm so glad you didn't say Aaron Rodgers. I'm so glad.
No, Aaron Rodgers is done. Aaron Rodgers is cooked. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is truly done. I'm not interested in Aaron Rodgers. I actually not interested in Kirk Cousins. Yeah, but Russell Wilson is interesting because Russell Wilson is 37. He probably has 3 or 4 years left to play. I think it was kind of demonstrated here that with how he's played in Pittsburgh, that if you surround him with a solid football organization, that there's probably some good football in there. Russell Wilson has a presence. Russell Wilson's a Hall of Famer. Let's be honest about this, because we're both in that room. If you take Brock Purdy out of that room and you put in Daniel Jones or Mac Jones or, a young player like that, I don't know how the team would react. If you bring Darnold in, I think Darnold they know of, and they have a relationship there. So I don't think there would be as many people upset with that. But Russell Wilson's kind of a wild card factor because he is Russell Wilson. He's a Hall of Famer. And I don't know that Russell Wilson's done. I don't know how you feel about
Russell Wilson. Idea. I think this is one of your better ideas. I like Russell Wilson. We know he can win in the division. He's a better quarterback than Geno. He's a better quarterback than Kyler.
Fields.
Sorry, Kyler. Yeah. I mean,
he beat out Fields.
He does a lot of the stuff that Purdy does, probably for like a tenth of the price at this point in their careers. And again, he's a Super Bowl champion. Yes, I kind of like this idea. Russell Wilson.
Well, and also when he walks through the door, the reaction, like if you get off of Brock and you go for Daniel Jones, there's going to be some guys in that room who are like, "What are we doing?"
What?
Now, some guys are going to sign up and be like, "Oh, no sweat, I love it. I'm a team guy. I believe in Kyle." But there's going to be other guys in the room who are going to be like, "You moved off."
Well, the Daniel
Brock
Jones
Purdy.
idea is sign Daniel and keep Brock and have a competition. And if Brock wants to request a trade, then trade him and draft a quarterback. But no, I like the idea of just sign Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson this year, Grant, this is what he did this year. This year, he's completing 65%.
So is Brock.
13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Brock's 15 and 9.
He's taking care of the football. He's taking care of the football. And let's see his runs. He's carried 30 times for 57 yards. So he's not the runner anymore that he used to be. But he takes care of the football. 13 touchdowns, only 3 picks. I just say I bring up Russell Wilson just from the standpoint of if Russell Wilson walks through that door, nobody's going to sit there and go, "What? You got rid of?" There might be some people that disagree, but nobody's going to sit there and go, "You brought in this guy." You know what I mean? He's got enough of a rep, enough clout, where I think that would be the name that would make people go, "Okay, now what are we getting for Brock?" We're getting a couple twos and a 3
to get Russell. It'd be so cheap, and it's like now you
what
can
is he
keep
making?
Greenlaw, Hufanga, Charvarius Ward. Like that's the whole thing about bringing in someone like him is you can actually keep the players you want to keep.
I'm a big backer of Brock, but I really do like Russell Wilson, and I really would if I could get Russell Wilson for cheap, and keep my team together. And if it's Kyle Strongton saying it's $65 million or don't call us, if he's going to play super hardball, then I'm going to have to play super hardball.
Yeah, because again,
I don't want to play super hardball, but
for like 10 million.
You think so?
You're probably, yeah. I mean, he's 37 years old. He doesn't have gaudy numbers. He's winning, but it's Pittsburgh. They win with a lot of quarterback or winning with Justin Fields. Yeah, I think you could get him on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, something really modest. And is Brock Purdy definitely better than Russell Wilson? I don't think so. In fact, maybe Russell Wilson's better than him. Again, Russell can throw down the field, and
Russell has a bigger arm.
Much bigger.
Russell has a bigger arm than Brock. He does.
Yeah,
he does. And I like Brock, but if Brock is going to regress to the point where he's making bad decisions, then suddenly the arm strength becomes an issue. I didn't like him in the draft. Why didn't I not like him in the draft? Because I thought he had a college arm. But from the draft to camp, he went to Jacksonville, got with some throwing coaches, got his mechanics down, and showed up in camp with what I would call just requisite NFL arm strength. And he's ridden that to tremendous success. But it does seem like when you introduce
didn't look that way against the Rams.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's the shoulder, but his deep ball on the last 3 or 4 games has just hung up there and hovered. It's really noticeable that there's loss of arm strength there. So is it temporary? Is it permanent? Is this the new Brock? Because if he's going to float the ball down the field, and the decision he made against the Rams with the season on the line and 3 offensive receivers open underneath, and he didn't take any of the checkdowns on a second down pass play and put the ball in harm's way, that's so uncharacteristic of Brock.
Well, Larry, you just asked a key question. Like, we don't really know if his arm is deteriorating or what's going on. And if he doesn't know and they don't know and we don't know, then how do you really offer a guy a 4 or 5 year contract extension with that much guaranteed? I don't think you can. I think you tell him, Brock, you've done some great stuff for us. We wanted to reward you. We're concerned about your arm. It's trending the wrong direction. We'd be happy to give you an extension next year if you can come back and prove that you can regain the level that you had in 2023, but not until then. Sorry. And if you want to call our bluff and go around the league and find a team that's willing to pay you what you want, by all means, man. But you're not going to find that team. It's not the Raiders.
I mean, I might give Kyle Strongton, if he really is like, hey man, it's 65, or we're not putting our name on the paper, then I think I would, if I was Lynch, I would say, hey, you know what? You guys have our permission to see if there's somebody out there that's willing to give you that kind of money. And then if you do, bring him back to earth when you don't find that to us. That
yeah.
Otherwise, let's talk realistically, because I could get to 50, but I can't go. If you said to me, where do I think he belongs? 45 million. That's where I think he belongs. 3 years, 45 million per year, with most of it guaranteed. That's where I think he belongs. But what's the ceiling for me? 3 years, 150. That's the ceiling for me. That's the duration and the dollar figure. That's the ceiling for me. So if I called Kyle Strongton and he said, hey, guess what? Your ceiling's 50. We're not even discussing anything unless it's north of 65. There's nothing left to talk about at that point. It's time to move on. That's what we call an impasse. That's an impasse. I'm going to share the screen here because Baldy was on 95.7 The Game this morning on the radio. And this is what he had to say. Let's hear this from Brian Baldinger, and then we will react. Baldy with Bonte and Shasky this morning, and Baldy's been a big fan of Purdy, so this is a pretty interesting soundbite.
Baldy, I'll ask you directly, and we'll get back into the rest of the team because Crean Law, Debo, there's so much to talk about. If John Lynch came to you and said, hey, Brian, I know you watch every single week, and you watch all these other quarterbacks around the league. Brock is demanding top 5 money. What do we do here? What would your advice to him be?
I'd say I'd go flip him for Sam Darnold right now.
Wow.
I mean, so Minnesota, look, let's just think about Sam for a second. You sat there as a backup all year. You learned what a first-class franchise, game planning, how to build a team. He saw that for the first time in his life. Now he's with Kevin O'Connell, who's an elite play caller with a very, very good offense that has a real style to it, and he's flourishing. And Minnesota doesn't have to commit anything to him right now. All they're doing, I talked to the general manager 2 weeks ago, Quezzy, and just to play it out. They've got a quarterback they drafted. They don't have to give him top flight money, or they could trade him. I would be having a conversation with Minnesota to see what it would take to get Sam Darnold back. He's a bigger, stronger, more athletic, I don't know, but he's bigger, stronger than what Brock is. Or can you play with both of them at a modicum of salary and afford both and, I don't know, have a competition? I mean, I'd be interested to see what it would take to get Sam Darnold.
Very interesting. I don't see a competition. That to me seems crazy. And it doesn't seem like they could possibly make it work financially to have them both. Would you agree there? That just seems kind of like, I don't know.
Or they can make it work if they didn't pay Brock.
Sam Darnold, but I really don't love Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy. I think
they can make it work if they don't pay Brock. If they just say, Brock, we're paying Darnold instead. You're still the starter, but there's a competition and you're not getting an extension.
Isn't that going to introduce just a massive locker room nightmare? I mean, you're going to pay Darnold even though Brock has been your starting quarterback the last 3 years and you went to a Super Bowl with him, and you're not going to pay Brock. I don't know, man. Who's accomplished? If you said who's accomplished more in their NFL career, I'd probably say Purdy than Darnold.
Iron sharpens iron, though. Got to see what happens in the competition.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where they're at. That's where they're at on this situation. So this is a very.
It's not like forking over $65 million a year to Brock Purdy is the right thing to do. So they have a conundrum here. What is the right thing to do? It ain't that.
Right. And we just laid out the options. You can go sign Russell Wilson. You can go get a reclamation project. You can draft somebody in the draft. You can trade for Kirk Cousins, who's clearly available. You can try to trade for Sam Darnold. But I don't even think you need to trade for Sam Darnold. You could just sign Sam Darnold. You could wind up trading Brock Purdy. I don't know what kind of trade market there is. You could sign Brock Purdy, but I think it's going to have to be $50 million. Otherwise, I don't think his agent's going to sign. So
the trend around the league, though, right now is the reclamation project at quarterback, right? I mean, it's not like go up and draft a guy, because a lot of times those guys aren't quite ready or they go to bad teams or whatever. But it's the first round pick that everyone's given up on. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. There's example after example of guys who at like 28 and 29, they're finally put in a good team, and people are like, oh, right, that's why they were drafted so high, because they do have a lot of talent. Maybe the Niners could be that team where you put it, like if you put Baker Mayfield on the team, I think that's the thing with Brock. He was great in 2022 and 23, but the reality is you could put 20 quarterbacks on that team. They would have put up career highs, maybe more. Any quarterback would have put up career high on that team. And that's not really what you're looking to pay for. You're looking to pay for someone who can carry you and be top 5. And if you don't have that, then you got to find a middle ground.
It's going to, it would be a risk to move off of Brock, and man, it might cost Shanahan and Lynch their jobs if they moved off of Brock for Darnold, and Brock had success somewhere and Darnold came here with Ricky Pearsall and JJ and said, oh, wow, this isn't Jordan Addison, this isn't Justin Jefferson, and all of a sudden he backslid. Then, those guys could, the fan base could come calling for Kyle Shanahan. All right, let's hit Bet US. We'll share the screen right here and let's make a wager before we talk a little bit more about Kyle Shanahan. Here we go. This is our Bet US pick of the week, or we're going to make our picks this week. Head over to betus.com. Use the promo code YouTube150. You'll get 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% sign-up bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Again, sign up at betus.com. Use the code YouTube150 to claim that offer. All right. Any of the games stand out to you this week that you know of already? Let's see. Get rid of that. Okay. There's Denver and the Chargers Thursday night. It's Chargers -3. Let's see the Niners spread. The Niners are a pick'em, and they went from Niners -1 to a pick'em. So the money's coming in on the Dolphins, it looks like. There's Dallas getting 4.
No, the Niners going to win that game. They're going to win this game. The Niners going to win this game. Yeah, okay, I do think so.
Take the Niners.
Because their defense played really well on Thursday night. And with Greenlaw back and Bosa out there, like they're a scary defense again. And I think Tua is literally intimidated by Bosa, the way Geno is. So no, I'm picking the Niners. The Niners should win this game.
Okay, I like that. Let's parlay. We'll parlay into it. We'll do a couple games. Is there another game that you like besides the Niners?
What about that Pittsburgh-Baltimore game? That's a big spread for
Thursday night. That's Thursday night in Baltimore. Ravens are 6.5-point favorites.
That's
you like
a big
the Ravens
spread
at home?
I kind of like Pittsburgh, 6.5 points. And they need this game, and they're a good team, and they're both tough teams that are division opponents. I think that's going to be a close game.
Okay. Let's take Pittsburgh 6.5.
6.5.
Parlay that in. I would love it. It was 7.5, but 6.5. We'll take 6.5, and then let's go with one more. I'll take Detroit at Soldier Field minus the 6.5. I know there's no David Montgomery, but the Bears. Oh my God,
that team is defeated.
The Bears are so bad, and there's no chance that the Bears can hang with the Lions. I mean, I don't care if it's the backup Lions. I don't care if it's the B team, the C team. I'm taking the Lions. And we'll put 20 on that. So let's parlay these. Let's parlay these three. So we got Niners on the pick'em. We got Steelers plus 6.5 over the Ravens, and we're going to take the Lions minus 6.5. And we're going to bet 20. And if we go 3 for 3, it's a 3-team parlay. We win 120. That's nice. That is really nice. Head over to betus.com. Use the promo code YouTube150 to get that first 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and 125% sign-up bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Again, sign up at betus.com. Use the code YouTube150 to claim your offer. And thanks to BetUS for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show and the Cohn Zone. Love the people over at BetUS, and we've been driving all kinds of people over there to them, so we appreciate them an awful lot, and I'm sure they appreciate us as well. All right, let's hit a couple more topics before we get out of here. What do you
quick,
view?
I want to talk about what Brock Purdy needs if they're going to if they keep Brock Purdy, which they're probably going to do.
Right, we wanted to hit that actually before BetUS, but yeah, what would you say if the Niners decide that their best option? Because right now there are no indications they're moving off of Brock Purdy. So let's just try to, talk about that scenario first, because it's probably the most likely. The most likely scenario, according to Pelissaro and Ian Rappaport, is that the Niners are going to sign Brock Purdy. They're going to sign him to an extension, and it's going to be this offseason. So what could the Niners do to make things easier for Brock Purdy? What would you do if you were going to go with Brock Purdy? Moving forward to try to make him successful?
Okay, yeah, good. This is, I think, a key question. It's something they need to figure out. So 2 things. One, last year in 2023, he had the number 1 quarterback rating against man coverage in the league. It's 118. This year, he's 38th in the league against man coverage at 56th or something. So this whole man coverage thing is a big thing, and I think the fact that he's had success against it in the past means that it's probably very much to do with the receivers, as you've been talking about all year. Like, Debo doesn't create any separation, and neither does Jennings. He makes contested catches, but he doesn't create separation. And I think a quarterback like Brock, who doesn't have a strong arm, needs wide receivers who create a lot of separation. So he's not throwing into small windows, he's throwing into big windows. So that's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. They need as many receivers who can create big separation against man coverage as possible, and running backs too. So I think that's why Ayuk and McCaffrey were so important to him. And you don't know what those guys are going to be moving forward. Maybe those guys will unlock Brock Purdy's special qualities, or maybe not. They really need to make sure they have man coverage beaters on this team. Otherwise, Brock Purdy's going to continue to struggle. In addition, when they face man coverage, they get a lot of these pressures, exotic pressures. And I think it's clear that Jake Brendel isn't particularly good at setting protections or playing center in the NFL. So if that's going to be the center's job, they need to get a good one, like when they had Alex Mack, someone who can really be an asset, especially mentally, on the picking up those blitzes. That would be 2 things.
I would say I need 2 things. I need speed. I need a lot more speed. Like, I need speed at tight end. I need speed out of the backfield. I need speed at wide receiver. They are so fucking slow. It's just absolutely so frustrating to watch. And where it really hurts them is in situational football. They on the goal line in the red zone, they can't move anybody. So to me, it's like, what did Philly do? Philly changed out their OC, changed out their DC, added some good DBs in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and then on offense they added Mekhi Becton, and they just had this. They have this big, dominating, massive line. And they lean on you. And then in the fourth quarter, it's advantage Philadelphia. I just saw them lean on Pittsburgh. They did it to Washington a few weeks ago. They've won 10 in a row. I think you got to get much bigger and more physical on the offensive line, especially in the interior. Goodbye, also, Jake Brendel. Yes.
How do you spend all this money on a quarterback, $65 million a year, and you don't spend on the offensive line? Right? It's like buying a Lamborghini and not having a garage. You have to protect the guy. That's your investment. Look what the Colts did to Andrew Luck. Was that long ago? Have people forgotten? You can't do that. If you're that committed to your freaking quarterback, then you need to be that committed to your offensive line too. And what have the Niners ever been that committed to offensive line since Harbaugh left?
Well, I mean, I agree. And also, what is, if you're going to go with Brock, how is Brock going to win? Brock's going to win by having a big, physical, dominating offensive line, a very dominant run game, and some sticky-handed receivers that and somebody with some speed to clear out some space. If you can surround him with that, he's going to be able to win. But if you're going to ask him to drop back to pass, run for his life behind a Swiss cheese line, throw it to a bunch of receivers who can't run at all, and just all, then what's going to happen is what's happening, which is he's going to throw lots more 50-50 balls. He's going to put balls in harm's way. He's just going to throw stuff up for grabs because he's going to try to make a play, because that's his nature, is to try to make a play. But the reality is that they don't have a lot of separation. I mean, the 49ers are 8th overall in DVOA as a team, but they're the only team in the top 16 in DVOA that has a losing record. So they're 8th overall in DVOA as a team, but they're really much worse than that because they're not good at situational football. They're not good in the red zone. They're not good on third down. So it's like that. They really need to get better in the red zone. How do you get better in the red zone? You got to have more speed, more size, more quickness. And their line's small. They don't move anybody in the run game. They don't have a lot of size. They don't have a lot of speed. So there you go. I mean, it's just, to me, that's very clear. You have to build, if you're going to go with Brock, you got to build a fortress around him. And I would take the same approach that the Chiefs took. Look at the Chiefs interior. I mean, the Chiefs just played Myles Garrett. He didn't do anything in that game. Why? Because they totally blocked him and neutralized him, and they had the offensive linemen to handle him. The Niners play a team like that, and the guy like Garrett's going to take over the game. So if you're going with Brock, you got to build up the line, and I think you got to get him some incredible speed, and then just get him to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and I think you can come up with dynamic plays. But the dynamic plays have to be based on, the speed of the guys that you're handing it to and throwing it short to. You're not going to be able to throw it down the field 45 yards. It's not his game. Just not the way he's going to go. All right, let's talk about Kyle. What is Kyle's number one issue right now? Is it physical? Is he fatigued? Is he too close to his players? People have said that. Is it the fact that Kyle Shanahan is a good coach, but for whatever reason can't attract a proven premier defensive coordinator? I mean, that they have to go in-house for Sorensen, and it's like, or is it the fact that he's a little too pass happy? I mean, this last game against the Rams, Grant, 31 passes and 19 runs on a wet night against the 28th worst run defense in the league. When your quarterback doesn't handle a wet football, and instead of 31 runs, you pass it 31 times. To me, I think that's his issue. But what do you see his number one issue as?
Well, I think it stems from the fact that he scored 19 points in regulation. His offense was bad in the Super Bowl. And then the overtime happened where he either didn't know the rule or didn't relay the rule to his players. And for whatever reason, he took the ball first when he should have taken it second. So, I mean, whatever game management decisions, but also just the offense. I think most people look at him as the reason they lost that Super Bowl. Probably his players too. And what did he do afterwards? He scapegoated the defensive coordinator, who actually did a pretty good job in that game. So I just feel like ever since that moment, people have looked at Kyle differently, including probably his players. And it'd be one thing if his offense was still clicking, but it's not. He's not much of a leader. He doesn't really inspire people like Dan Campbell. He just gets people open. Until this year, he's not getting people open. He's not scoring touchdowns very much anymore. And I think, like, you look at him, you look at Mike McDaniel, who's running the same scheme down in Miami. That offense isn't working very much anymore. I think people might be looking at Kyle like, man, defenses may have figured you out. And if that's the case, like, you're not really bringing much to the table anymore. I think that's the problem. Like, if we're talking about, has he lost the locker room, that could be why, if he has, or if he's in the process of it, because people look at him like, man, the league has caught up to you.
Well, it's like, if you want to be, one of the great attributes of Kyle Shanahan, I think is going kind of underutilized. I mean, I remember doing interviews with Greg Cosell. Be Greg, you watch every team in the league. What stands out about Kyle? What do you like about Kyle? And he's like, you know what? His run pass fusion is the best in pro football. He can make his play action pass game so dangerous and difficult to defend because he can mirror it to his run game in a way that other coaches struggle with. But where is the play action pass? I mean, they haven't run the ball effectively since the bye week, but they're not operating from under center with a lot of play action pass. It's Brock in the gun as a downfield passer almost exclusively. And I don't know that we've ever gotten an answer as to why the dramatic switch. At least I haven't gotten that answer.
I have no idea. We don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened to the play action game? What happened to Brock Purdy under center? And suddenly it's like all of a sudden he's in the shotgun, and he doesn't look nearly as effective. That's one thing. But to me, once again, you go back to the biggest games of Kyle Shanahan's career, whether it was, in Atlanta as an offensive coordinator, whether it's Super Bowl 54, Super Bowl 58, the Rams NFC Championship game. He gets pass happy. 31 passes and 19 runs on a rainy night when your quarterback does not handle the wet football, and the team that you're going against is 28th against the run.
We've talked about it so many times. He does this repeatedly every time there's a big game. And look at McVay. They ran more than they passed, even though their quarterback is way better than their running back.
It's crazy. Let's hit some supers. We got a couple more topics, but let's hit some supers. The Ryan G. Hensley show. Ryan, good to hear from you. He says, who is making these personnel decisions in your opinion?
Jed should know.
I mean, ultimately, I think the offensive personnel is Kyle's domain. I think the defensive personnel is probably the front office's domain. I get the sense sometimes when I ask Kyle about some of the new players like Nick McLeod, they picked him up the other day, almost like he has no opinion, almost as if he doesn't know that he's on the team. So I would say offensive players, he's definitely involved. Defensive players, he probably defers. That would be my guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Iman Report says, too cap crippled to do F the picks. Got to break up Shanny and Lynch. Yeah, you can't.
You can't. You got to make that pick. You got to make that pick.
They're not in a position right now to say, Les Snead, we're gonna trade, and we're gonna get veterans. No, you're gonna have to do it in the draft, or you're not gonna do it. The Unfaithful Perspective says the irony is, despite building a powerhouse, ultimately it will be quarterback that ends John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan's time in San Francisco. Should have found the guy first, not Solomon Thomas. Gosh, is everything going to go back to the initial plan of, hey, we're going to get Cousins, so let's not scout Watson or Mahomes?
Right. Yeah.
Would the Niners have even known that Mahomes was the guy based on Texas Tech? I don't know. It's hard to say.
I don't know.
Eamon Report says 333, good for a Giants hitter, not for drafting. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hit one of every 3 times. Maritime Wake Gal says, if Brock is not the guy who can win a Super Bowl, why would any owner want Kyle to be the guy to pick and train the next quarterback? Kyle has made 5 major quarterback mistakes. I mean, does anybody know what they're looking for? I mean, we never really got the answer definitively of who picked Trey Lance. If somebody said to you, Grant, who picked Trey Lance? I want to say it's Kyle, but I don't know. I almost get the feeling that because Kyle hasn't been dragged for that, it's probably wasn't Kyle. It was probably Kyle deferring to somebody else who was pro Lance. I don't know, but
I'm thinking that was Kyle. But I also think it was probably an organizational decision. Yeah, I don't think anyone would like. I don't think he would have been like, I want this person, and I'm getting overruled. Darn. Like I think he's the king of the castle there.
I would think that it would be Kyle just based on his position in the organization, but we don't know exactly his how strong his opinion is in their draft room. Eamon Reports says, I'd bring in Zach Wilson as quarterback 2 in 2025. I mean, I could picture Brock hating Zach Wilson and Wilson hating Brock. So I don't know if that's the best way to go, but maybe it's not about anybody's feelings anymore. Maybe it's just about, iron sharpens iron, as Grant said earlier, or Joe didn't love Steve. Steve didn't love Joe, but man, they sure played well. Frisco Shills, $490 million total over 7 years. Structure $100 million signing bonus, $85 in incentives, $160 million on years 6 and 7, $145 million in salary and roster over years 1 through 5. It's an awful lot, man. It's an awful lot. Let's see. Ricky Williams in the house says, "Don't laugh or get mad, but could I interest you in a Kirk Cousins? I know the Falcons are looking for a way out. How much would it cost to get him? I don't want Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is old, and he doesn't win big games, and he plays horribly in big games. The irony is the one time that Kirk Cousins looked like a superstar was the game against the Niners. He was amazing that night. That was the only time I've actually seen him look like a franchise quarterback, truly, his entire career." JC says, "Would Josh win force-feeding Debo the ball? Would Josh Allen win force-feed?" I mean, Josh Allen's got lesser receivers than the Niners and finds a way to get it done. I mean, Josh Allen, he is to me, Josh Allen is going to get that ring this year. I know, especially coming out of this week where Mahomes got hurt. Detroit's not the team this year. It's going to be either Philly or Green Bay in the NFC. It's going to be Buffalo in the AFC, and I think it's going to be Buffalo to win it all. You have a thought on who's going to win it all? I mean, Josh Allen looks just like he's going to win a ring at some point. This is probably his year.
It feels like he's probably not going to be Kansas City this year, so I'll go with Buffalo too. Although Philly's interesting. The team is so good.
Oh, I mean, and that's the other one too. Should the Niners?
I'm going to go with Philly for a second because Buffalo's defense looks alarmingly bad recently. How about that?
Is it look bad, or do they just stay in that 2 shell and let you run it on them and then never let you throw it? Because their pass D looks pretty good. It's their run D doesn't look very good. They can't stop the run.
They're giving up a lot of points. We'll see.
It was weird. I'll say this: when I watched the All-22 of Niners Buffalo, granted it was a sloppy night as far as snow goes, but Buffalo kept their safeties in that 2 shell all the way down the field the entire game. I mean, and when the Niners ran successfully, did they come out of it? No, they didn't. So I don't know. That's what McDermott wants to do. Joseph Ernberg says, "F Jones, F Brock Purdy, F Cam Ward, F Sam. Start Tanner Mordecai." All right, there you go. L. Kurtz, tank for Archie Manning. Might be a little old at this point. Ricky Williams says, "Wilson needs a line. Come on, fellas, but so close. Cousins, so I guess we're cooked. Or so does Cousins, so I guess we're cooked. How about we pay Brock and fire sell everyone, be back in 3 years?" Well, if you are going to, if you were going to go in the draft, let's say they wanted to, let's say they loved Cam Ward and they wanted to go in, then maybe it would make sense to sell off on Bosa and a couple big name defensive guys and try to rebuild. I don't see the Niners doing that.
The one thing they shouldn't do is trade up for a quarterback in the draft. I mean, if they've learned anything, don't do that. If you like Cam Ward, wait 4 years and get him in free agency.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say this. If you do that, you sure as fuck better be right, or it's going to be, you're probably going to lose your gig over it. Kevin F. said, "Sad that this dynasty is over. No rings to show for it. Never thought they'd have to rebuild sooner than the Dubs. Rip off the Band-Aid now." Yeah, I mean, that's the question. I mean, where is this roster? Where is this roster? Is this roster ready to win? We got this one from Kenny G. Reclamation project, Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson wants to be here. I think Shanahan likes Zach Wilson. But you know what? Brock is so popular in that room, and Zach Wilson has been unpopular thus far based on some things he said in the media. That would be a really hard sell, man. All I would say is if they moved off of Brock Purdy for Zach Wilson, all I got to say is Zach Wilson better play well right away, or it's going to be ugly, truly ugly.
Zach Wilson better never play for the 49ers. How about that?
RS's solution: make Jose Canseco Brock Purdy's new quarterback coach.
I like that.
Get Esther with her leather dress. Ethan M., if you had to choose between YouTube and journalism, what would you pick? YouTube. And it's officially day one of me asking Grant to cover UFC.
UFC? Do you do that?
I don't cover UFC. I'm a UFC fan, but I don't do live streams after it. I will if there's a big enough fight. But
I don't know. That would be fun, though. If there's a really big fight, that would be fun. Why not?
Oh, it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
UFC's fun. I mean, I got into UFC during the pandemic a little bit because it was the only thing going. But what do you think? YouTube and or journalism, Grant? What's it going to be?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, we both are down there. It's just broadcast journalism. I think what we're going to see is every beat writer moving forward is going to have a YouTube channel, or they won't have a job. It's a non-negotiable now.
I mean, I'll give you an example of a glimpse, Ethan, into yesterday in Santa Clara. We go into the locker room. They say the PR guy says to me, "Hey, by the way, Bosa is going to be talking. He's in the corner of the locker room." So I'm start walking over there. As I walk over there, the only person standing there is Cam Inman, and he just happened to ask Bosa as I'm walking up, "Hey, Nick, did you have any indications that Devondre was going south in the pregame?" And I walked up rolling, and I recorded him saying, "Yeah, actually, he was being loud in the locker room in the pregame, and I didn't say anything, but I heard it, and there were some indications." Anyway, 2 hours later, the NFL Network calls me and is like, "Hey, can we use your version of the of what Bosa said on TV and in our socials?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." Well, I would have thought maybe they would have asked Cam because Cam was just recording the audio, or maybe even just writing it in a notebook. So we're in a digital world now where people want the video. So the video has value. So I would, we are all standing there, but if you record it video wise, I think you're probably ahead.
Some people want to receive their information in print, and some people want to receive it in video. And I think you kind of have to give both now in 2024 to be a journalist.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And younger people are not reading as much as maybe we want them to read.
That's
HR
true.
says, "Don't dig the hole deep or a full reset, Jed." So he's saying, don't put off anything. Don't, hey, we're this far down the road, so we have to do this, this, and this. He wants a full reset. I wonder if his full reset comes with a new regime, or if it's just resetting the players. Big Tone 707. Daniel Jones has a bigger arm, just saying. He does, but he also is a turnover machine. Aru Illustre says Kyle isn't a leader. He should have been the one to rip Campbell a new one and send him to the locker room, not John Lynch.
True.
All I would say to that is Kyle's calling the game, and that was happened on the sideline. Normally the head coach is the central figure in any organization. I almost feel like John Lynch may have enjoyed doing it, though. Shreddy Murphy says they will pay Brock $60 million, but the window won't open again for another 2 to 3 years. Draft a good backup quarterback. Then the cheap quarterback cycle will start again as the Super Bowl window opens back up. I mean, that's going to require patience, Shreddy, for sure. Sean says, can we stop saying that Brock Purdy deserves a bag because he was on a team that won games? A depleted team has been the best litmus test for what he is. The team is 23-11, 4-2 in the playoffs with a competent quarterback, full stop. I mean, those games didn't win themselves. I mean, I'll say that. And Brock Purdy played really well against Detroit and Green Bay in the second half. Otherwise, they don't go to that Super Bowl. And I don't know that Brock Purdy's the reason they didn't win that Super Bowl either. All I would say is, man, it would be an awful shame if you got rid of a 24-year-old quarterback because he had a bad 5 or 6 games on a depleted team, and then wind him be good somewhere else. But there's no guarantees of anything. So all this is speculative. Artemis says, Brock not worth $50 million a year. Sorry. Is Hurts? Because he's probably as good as Hurts in my mind. Anthony Martinelli, new member. Way to go, Anthony. Randall.
The problem with Brock is he hasn't been as good as Hurts this year. He hasn't been as good as Darnold this year. So what do you do about that? What do you make of that?
Yeah, but
do you just write it off? Like that was Baldinger's point. Like, is it just an aberration?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Brock's offensive line is not the Eagles' offensive line. Brock's weapons are not Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. I mean, this year, his weapons suck. His line is pretty weak.
I mean, George Kittle doesn't suck. Juwan Jennings
George Kittle doesn't suck, but Juwan Jennings is a 4.7 receiver, and was a 7th round pick for a reason. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, where's the speed? They have no speed. If you watch the all-22, nobody's open. Ricky's run 107 routes. He's got 2 catches. He's made no impact. Debo got old overnight. Ayuk wasn't the same player all year. CMC was out for almost the entire year. His weapons are not Philly's weapons. His line is not Philly's line. I mean, it just has to be mentioned. I mean, I'm not saying that he's better than these guys, but I think he's in their caliber, and he's just doing it with a lesser surrounding cast this year, and he's not doing it. I mean, he's backslid.
That's the thing. Yeah.
But what's really disturbing and what makes me consider moving off of Brock is that he has to make good decisions. His game, his whole mindset has got to be make good decisions. And that last decision was a terrible decision. Randall says Bake Show beat Lions and Eagles, Larry, just saying. You talking about Baker Mayfield?
Mm-hmm.
And he lost to the Niners. I mean, Baker Mayfield has definitely reclaimed his career. I like Baker Mayfield in the draft. I really did. Tony B says, imagine Jameis and Kyle's personalities together. Oh, my goodness. We got this one from Casey Cole. 2025 should be a retooling year, in my opinion, but with their opponents next season, missing the playoffs is inexcusable. 2025 is playoffs or bust for Kyle. Yeah, if you look at the playoff teams, the teams are playing, they better make the playoffs. Aharui Illustre says, have someone else call plays so Kyle can coach? Question mark. Kyle's never giving up the play calling. I'll tell you that right now. Kenny G says there should be a rain game clause in the new contract. Yeah. Brock really doesn't handle the rain. I mean, and that's a major problem too. I mean, let's be honest about that. Whether he wears a glove or doesn't wear a glove, you better come up with a plan, because guess what? You win Super Bowls in February, but you get there by how you play in December and January. And what are the odds that you're never going to play in inclement weather? You're going to play in the rain. You can't be just god awful in the rain. It's just not okay. Danny Y'all says, again, if you want to crown Purdy's ass, crown him, but he is who I knew he was. And y'all, Krug, Bruce, Stats, keep letting him off the hook. Please don't group me with Bruce and
Danny Green.
I don't mind being grouped. I just don't want to be grouped with those guys. Sean says Larry is saying monkey see monkey, basically. Larry is saying monkey see monkey, basically. What? I'm not really sure what he's what he's saying there. Ethan M says January 18th, UFC 311. Let's go. Couple last thoughts before we get out of here. I have 2 more for you, Grant. One is, who is most responsible for the Niners' offensive backslide this year? Because is it Purdy? Is it Kyle? Is it the weapons? Is it the line? What would you say in a vacuum is the thing that's most responsible for the Niners' offensive backslide?
I think it's 2 things. I think it's the loss of Christian McCaffrey and the shocking fall off of Deebo Samuel. Those guys scored the touchdowns. Yeah. What Chris scored 20 something last year, and
21
scored like 12 or 14, something like that. I mean, they scored the touchdowns, and without those 2, I think we're seeing what Brock Purdy is and what Kyle Shanahan is. Like, the 49ers offense was struggling before they got Christian McCaffrey. That's why they traded so much for him, and he changed everything for him. He was great. He was playing at like a Hall of Fame level, and then he was gone. And then when he came back, he was really not playing at a Hall of Fame level. And Kyle Shanahan, even though he had Jordan Mason and Garendo and certain play Kittle, he couldn't bridge the gap, or whatever you want to say that was. He couldn't find new ways to score touchdowns. I think once you took the touchdowns off the field for the 49ers, there was no replacement. And Kyle Shanahan seemed like a guy who was running out of ideas. Those 2 guys.
I would say the number one issue is the weapons. Ayuk, CMC, Debo, 40 touchdowns combined last year. That trio has 2. And the bigger issue is that trio may not do anything next year. So that's what makes this offseason kind of the extra wrinkle, is that, do they need to get better at the line of scrimmage? Yeah. Do they need to figure out the quarterback situation? Either Brock's going to be the guy or not? Yeah. But the other thing they got to figure out going into next year is what the hell happened to their weapons from last year to this year, and what can they expect to get from their 3 top weapons next year. And if it's not premier production, then they better go out and find some new weapons, or they're going to be down for quite a while. So I would say Brock is backslid. I don't think Kyle's right. Physically, he doesn't look right. I think their offensive line is backslid a little bit, but the biggest issue is that Debo, CMC, and Ayuk last year were all monster. This year, they're nothing. And next year, they may not even be on the team. Okay, 2 last ones. What would you do with Debo Samuel?
I would cut him. He can't be on this team. He's a negative on the field and in the locker room. And I know it would take a $30 million dead cap hit. I would take it. I don't think this team's going to be good next year, but they do think they're going to be good next year. So I think they're going to keep him.
Keep him and renegotiate him and extend him?
I think they might. Yeah, because that's the only way to make him cheaper.
Right. So that's a major mistake, I think, if they did that. I would move off. I would move off of Debo. And the last question I have for you, the last topic in our stream here, the Niners struggled. The biggest difference between last year and this year is the division. The last 2 years in the division, the Niners won 11-1. This year, they got swept by the Rams, and they've already lost to Seattle once and Arizona once, and they got one more game with Arizona, and they may get swept by Arizona. So all these teams look better than them. How do you view the NFC West as far as Seattle, Rams, Arizona? Who would you say is their number 1 challenger? Who's number 2? Who's number 3? How do you see the division going into the future?
It seems like the Rams are still the class of the division because they have the best quarterback, they have a good coach, and they have Puka Nacua is really good. Cooper Kupp is done, but Kyron Williams is good and Puka Nacua is great. Maybe not great, but he's excellent. So I think that team's really good. I don't know what's going on with Seattle. Like, they still got to figure out their quarterback situation. Geno's fine, but he's 35. And Sam Howell's just awful. And the Cardinals may need to get a new quarterback too. I'm curious to see what happens with Kyler. He seems like he needs to sort of like start the nomadic journey that Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold went on, because it's not going to happen for him in Arizona. It's not going to happen for them with him. So I'm curious. I feel like that team's a little bit in transition too. It's never going to happen for them with Kyler.
I think I agree with you on the Rams. I think the Rams are the team. What if Arizona came knocking and said, "Hey, we'll trade you Kyler for Purdy"? Purdy's from Arizona. Kyler's stats this year, he completed 69% of his passes. They just in this last game, Grant, went like 10 for 15 on third down. So he's been good on third down. 15 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's been sacked 23 times. He's run 63 times for 455 yards and 4 more touchdowns. So he's accounted for 19 touchdowns. Would you trade Brock if Arizona, Monty Ossenfort calls John Lynch right now? We'll give you Kyler Murray for Brock Purdy. Would you do it?
Yes, I would.
I would too.
Yep.
I think Brock's a top 10 quarterback, but I have Kyler over him. Okay. Showtime 2118 says, why does it matter what rounds the team finds their stars? First round or 7th round, a Hall of Famer is the same. They built a great roster. Look around the league. Their drafts are better than most. Yeah, but you know what? Your great players, your foundation players are almost always in the 1st and 2nd round in the first 3 rounds of the draft. And when you've missed 20 times in the first 3 rounds of the draft over a 4 or 5 year period, that comes home to roost, and it's come home to roost. That's why they're not as talented as some of the other teams in football. Jerron Anthony says, rumors are Chicago is interested in trading for Kyle Shanahan. Niners should listen. Doesn't sound like that's going anywhere. All day, every day. Kim says Brock doesn't win crunch time when he's down late in the 4th. That's how you earn $60 million and never really beat the top quarterbacks. And Abu Marco 23, last one on journalism. Thoughts on using Chat GPT to accelerate the process for articles? Have you asked your dad for his take on AI impact on the profession?
Well, I bet no. That's like using Chat GPT to write a paper in college. That's a no-no.
Yeah. I mean, come on. That's called plagiarism. Yes, that's
think so.
and that would
Can't
get
do
you kicked out of college. Don't do it. Don't do it.
No.
All right, Grant. What do you got cooking the rest of the day? You done for the night, or are you streaming again? What's your week like? What are you doing next?
I'm doing the 4-man front, which is me, Ryan, Coach, and Jesse on Jesse's channel in 39 minutes.
Nice,
so
nice. Everybody check out the 4-man front. I'm done for now. Raj and I are going to stream later on tonight, and then check me out at 6:00 on Niners Nightly on KMBR. And Matt Barrows is going to be my guest tonight, and also Chris Perkins, who covers the Dolphins, is going to stop by at 6:30. So that is what's going to do it for. That's what I'm going to have on tap for the rest of the day. For Grant, I'm Larry. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.